and welcome to the End in Mind podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin, the owner of Meraki Media Management. The End in Mind is a place where we come to share stories, tips, and strategies of many entrepreneurs, creatives, business owners, and just some people that aren't willing to live the traditional lifestyle. We talk about how to live outside of the box today and how to incorporate what really is important in your life to keep that end goal always in mind. Again, if you would like to reach out to me in any type of way, you can find me on Instagram at Meraki_media_management. And I hope to hear from you all soon. Thanks so much and enjoy our show. Welcome back to the End in Mind podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin. I am so excited about today's episode. We've been prefacing this on social media for a while. This is my client, Lisa. She has so much amazing knowledge to share with you guys. Lisa comes from a very clinical therapy background, and she bridges spirituality to therapeutic practices. And I just absolutely love what she does. She works with highly sensitives, which hello is me, and empaths, and all of the people that we speak to on this podcast. So get your pen and paper, plug in your earbuds. This one's going to be a really good one for you guys today. Thank you so much for coming on, Lisa.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited about sharing all this.
I can't wait. I'm so excited to have you here. And can you tell us a little bit more about what you do? And I just want to let our community know what your background is and where you went to school. And I just think that your story is so wonderful and lends itself well to our community here. So tell us a little bit about you.
I'm from California. I went to Sonoma State and got a psychology degree in childhood development. I always knew since I was little that I wanted to work with people. I just didn't know how. So I went and got my psychology degree, and then I took time off because I didn't want to go to school anymore. Then I felt this nudge to start getting a master's in counseling. And I'm not joking, I threw a dart at the wall on like a map, and it landed in around Santa Fe, New Mexico. So I started researching and finding out. Plus, I did not want to take the GRE at the time. I don't think they have to do it anymore, but I'm not a good test taker. And I found Southwestern. It's called something a little different now, but it's a transformational existential master's program in counseling. So I applied, got in, and their philosophy is very different. It's not super clinical like most master's programs in therapy. We had a medicine wheel there. We were required to go to therapy, which most people don't realize that most programs don't make you go to therapy. They recommend it. Our program, you had to go once a week for the whole 2 years. You can maybe miss one or two, but that's it. Their philosophy was, we're not going to send you out to counsel people unless you do your work. And that meant all of our classes were around our own inner work, our own personal growth. So if we're learning a theory and method, it had to do with us. And how does that apply? So that we really had to dive in. We did a lot of spirituality there. I didn't recognize the importance until later on in my life. And so I've always had a unique approach to working with clients. And it's always been very holistic rather than very clinical. So then I went up to Montana to do my hours up there. And I ended up working with sex offenders for 2 years. My thought behind that was, if I can work with people who I had clear judgments around and had understandably so, but would be able to work with people where I felt a very strong judgment towards, then I can work with anybody. So it was like this idea of let me push myself out of my comfort zone. This is not the population, obviously, I want to work with or how I want to work. But if I can do this, then I can work with a lot of people. And so I actually really learned a lot. And I was very lucky and fortunate to work with one of the founders of a very, very impressive treatment facility up there. And so then I opened up my own practice in Wyoming for a while. I enjoyed it. I really loved working with people. And I would say in the last like 3 or 4 years, because my husband got a job back out in California, we moved out here. My license didn't transfer. And again, I was like, so what am I going to do? I guess I'll look into coaching. And I kind of had a little bit of judgment around coaching because the coaching, and we've talked before, the coaching industry, there's no regulation.
Yes.
And no regulation at all. And so I was really like, I don't know. So I found a certified program in spiritual coaching, life and spiritual coaching. And I was like, okay, that kind of feels good. All right. So I went down and I got certified about 4 years ago. And then I really realized that I've been practicing a lot of the spirituality components already.
Yeah.
So my whole world around therapy has been so holistic and client-centered and what their needs are, meditation, grounding, all of those things. And I was like, I already do all this. But that is not normally from a therapeutic approach.
Yes. Yeah. And I want to come back to what I said at the beginning, where I was mentioning words like clinical. And I think that that's actually what I meant was in therapy, they don't really encourage, or some therapists just don't, it's not something that they feel intuitively that they need, so they won't give it to their clients. And that's what I loved when you and I first started chatting, and we actually met through the podcast and Instagram and all of these amazing ways of us to connect online. But I loved that you said that you were willing to incorporate it, and that you had been already. And it was really just like, how can I now market this and take this to the public and really go all in on that? And can you tell me what that was like for you? I mean, especially coming from working with sex offenders and having this, pretty dark-ish background, right? Of unpacking some gnarly things, we may say. What did that trauma look like, and how were you able to take that and really develop your practice from that experience?
That's a really good question. So a lot of that was also what I recognized is a lot of clients I had worked with, most people have trauma. Okay. Yeah. So we obviously will get into that at some point, but most people have some sort of trauma. And so when it comes to working with the sex offenders, one of the things I really learned was there's such a healing component around victims who are ready and open to really hear not why they did it, but to understand where that was coming from. Like, because most of us go into that, why would you do that? How do you do that? At least that's where I came from. How could you do something like that? And once I was able to break down the psychology of what really happened in their brains and what was really going on, I was like, oh. And I found that a lot of my clients that had gone through trauma, particularly sexual trauma, really found that beneficial and really found this sort of like, so because it helped them sort of separate, I didn't do anything wrong. Yes. It really helped them take a look and be able, because as victims, we tend to go into, what did I do wrong? And to be fair, society tells us we wear too short of skirts, we drink too much. It's always the victim's fault, not always particularly women, but it's always the victim's fault. And so being able to really help some of my clients understand, like I walked them through their thought process and was able to show them how those barriers got broke down for them.
Yeah.
And and that really, not that I was encouraging in any way to go and like make up or talk or forgive or any of that kind of stuff. Absolutely not. And I definitely was not, that they shouldn't be. I was, you do the crime, you need to have consequences for it. Like this is not a pass. It was just a way to help my clients also understand the psychology of what was going on, to help them pull themselves apart from being a victim.
Totally.
I hope that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, especially when, like, for some reason, what's coming up is any other type of disorder almost, like whether it has to do with drugs or alcohol or an eating disorder, we might
Yeah.
say it's you fall into this role, right? When you feel victimized, when you feel like, oh, well, someone said this to me years ago, and that's why I have this belief, and it's
Yeah.
almost like we're fed up and we have every right to be fed up in that
Yeah.
moment. But yeah, being able to break it down like, oh, well, this person said or did that because of their own stuff, and it has nothing to do with us,
Yeah.
even though it's playing out in our lives every day, it does help the healing process. And I love that you shared that particular piece of what you did, because that was probably one of the most impactful, would you say, of what you did? Yeah.
Yeah, and I would always ask my clients, like, I have this information. Do you want to hear this? I would give them the option because this is their journey. This is not mine, and I really honor and I'm always extremely grateful when people choose to work with me because I it goes back to what we've talked about before, that you have to be able to click with the person. And it's not my job, whether I'm coaching you or whether I'm your therapist or both. It's not my job, one, to fix you. First of all, you're not broken. Second of all, it's not my job to tell you what to do. I'm here to help walk with you and guide you and share my knowledge with you. And you are your own expert. And I'm going to be there every step of the way and be your biggest cheerleader, and maybe sometimes help you kind of see things a little different, or point things out, or shift things, or do these things, because it's hard when we're caught up in our own stuff or when our bodies are overstimulated. Trauma has to do with that, being overstimulated, our nervous system's out of whack, so to speak. And so I'm not going to tell you what to do. I don't live your life. that's not, that's your life, and you have to do what feels good to you. And so I would always ask clients, because trauma is a big thing. And I don't know if now's the time to bring it up, but I'll just dive.
It is, totally. Let us have it. Give it to us.
It's very difficult for me to see a lot of coaches talk about, I'm a trauma-informed coach, or I'm a trauma that, I work with people with trauma, if they have not done, and I'm not talking about they've gone through their work of trauma. That's a whole, you can have your experience and you can share that, but you are not qualified to be training or to be working with people who have trauma.
Yeah.
And it's so important for anybody to really hear that, because there is a lot of people out there, particularly in the coaching world and therapy.
Yes.
There's a lot of amazing coaches out there, and there's a lot of amazing therapists out there, but you have to be careful, because you can really send somebody into a psychotic break when they are not ready to receive information. So you have to understand trauma, and you should very much be certified in trauma. And I'm not talking a 5-day course.
Right.
I'm talking about some seriously long-term classes, education, licenses, those sort of things. And that's what can be challenging, I think, for a lot of listeners who are entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
A lot of your listeners, when you're searching for a coach.
Yes. I completely agree. And obviously, as you guys can probably hear, this is why Lisa and I work together, because we clearly get one another. And, I'll step in and just say it also has to do with those beliefs that we have that sometimes we place on others. So sometimes a traumatic experience, which seems so heavy to us, that client, exactly like how you said, they're not ready to receive that they've even had trauma. And that's where you go to school for 3 years and you unpack what that looks like, how to navigate a psychotic break if it hits that way, because I'm sure that that happens. And I know in my own experience of therapy, which Lisa and I have talked about a lot throughout our sessions, I definitely felt like I was going through a psychotic break. So I can't imagine, with people that might have undergone something extreme in the past, this is talking me going back to I'm 15 when I experienced
Yeah.
something. It's been 11 years.
Yeah.
So when it's a lot more recent too, it can be, let's just say, a little bit more sensitive, right? And it hits
Absolutely.
home, and we don't know how to navigate that. I wouldn't know
Mhm.
how to navigate that. And I love what you're unpacking here for our listeners. Can you tell us more about what just how extreme it could be?
Yeah, it's so important to really understand. So, one of the things you brought up was so beautiful is because, you said this is 11 years ago. So a lot of people, our brains are the most fascinating thing. We hardly know anything about them. Some people compartmentalize that and do not know, you just said this, do not know they've been in trauma or have trauma. So and as a therapist or as a coach, sometimes you can see it and you know what those signs are and you're like, oh, but that is not your job to bring that up.
Yeah.
That is the client's job to bring that up. And your job is to sit there and hold that space in the most loving, compassionate way until they are ready. That is not our job. So one of the things, a really good indicator, people who go through some serious and trauma, they talk about big T. You've got domestic violence, you've got sexual, you've got verbal, all of those sort of things. And then you've got little T's, little traumas, like a loss of a pet can be a trauma. What trauma is, and we've talked a lot about this, is when your nervous system is on overload and you cannot process the information coming in. That's trauma. So if you get in a car wreck, that's trauma, or can be for some people. Sure. If you lose a job and you're financially freaking out, that can be trauma.
Sure. Yeah.
So those are those little T's. People don't recognize that. And that's why I say everyone's basically in some way dealt with trauma.
Totally.
So when our nervous system is on overload and we are unable to process that information coming in. For an example, it can look like somebody who's gone through some sort of trauma, big T, little t, doesn't matter. You can be opening up the fridge and somebody comes behind you and you don't know that they're there and they startle you. And you go into fight, flight, or freeze, right? We hear this, most of us have heard fight, flight, or freeze. Well, that's because that's what our nervous system is built to do.
Yeah.
And when we do not regulate it, we tend to go into staying in fight, flight, or freeze consistently, which is why we gain weight, which is why we, have autoimmune, which is why we have all of these other, things going on in our bodies. So something as simple as opening up the fridge, someone comes behind you and startles you, can send your nervous system into fight, fight, or freeze. And you may not know why if you are unaware that you had trauma.
Totally. Yeah.
It can be a smell. I've had clients who are like, oh man, every time I smell eggs, I can't do it because they go into fight, flight, or freeze because they were beaten every time they didn't make the eggs right.
Wow. Wow.
So it can be any kind of sense, So that's why for me, I'm super passionate about people really checking with the person they choose to work with.
Yeah.
You have the right to ask your therapist and or your coach, what trainings do you have?
Absolutely.
If you're aware that you have trauma. If you don't know, then you don't know. But if you have an awareness and you're going to work with somebody around that, you really need to find out. And then that kind of brings me into, I just wrote this down. So if you're considering therapy, that's really something if you want to heal or get help with mental health concerns. So therapists is, first of all, they're a regulated profession. So you need to have a license. and they are trained in mental health. So we're talking anxiety, trauma, personality disorders. You need help in navigating your emotions, healing from past traumas. Now, somebody who's in the coaching business, you're looking for a coach if you're wanting to get unstuck, if you want to set goals, if you want to actually achieve those goals, like you're motivated for that personal growth, you want to accelerate in the next steps of your life or your career. And so, you want to break out of your comfort zone. Those are coaching things. When you're dealing with mental health, that's a therapist. Now, there are a lot of therapists shifting into the coaching world and recognizing the importance of both. And so I just want to emphasize for those listeners who are aware that they may have some trauma, and not that they're going into working on it or anything. Maybe they've done a lot of work around it. You still have the right to ask who you want to work with.
Yeah, I think that that's such an important piece, and just why it's so important. The rhetoric that you use around trauma is so important. And I've just seen this play out amongst family, like my mother and I, let's just say, which I've shared on this podcast before. I love her dearly, but it happens. And sometimes you might say a word that's triggering and things like that. So I would love to come back to that in a second, but I think that needs to just be digested, that if you are hiring someone, you have every right to challenge them, to ask them questions, to sensitively ask questions, to over ask questions. I've had clients, send me millions of emails. We've talked for hours and hours and hours before they hire me. And I appreciate that, because then they're making an educated decision, just like you and I. We talked for many times before we worked together. And that's what's so important, because even me as a coach, this can be an exchange of energy on both levels. So it's also very important, if you are currently a coach, that you have a process. Are you talking to your clients beforehand? DMing is not enough. Let's just be honest. If you're onboarding a client that you're talking to weekly, direct messaging will not give you these answers. So make sure that you have an onboarding process. If you need help with that, reach out to me. I'm happy to offer some advice. But coming back to this traumatic and the rhetoric, what do you have to say around this part of society that's kind of like, buck up, like you should be able to take it? I know in my experience, which you guys have probably heard on the podcast before, to our listeners, I was told that over and over and over again my entire life. And it actually contributed to the trauma that I had. And even now, when I'm around certain family members, it's very important that I almost put on my armor. Like, okay, you know what they're going to say, but don't let it seep in. So what do you have to say about that, especially as a highly sensitive in today's environment?
So my first response to that is, that's their trigger, not yours. And so really recognizing, and then the second piece is exactly what you just said, putting on my armor, learning your boundaries, and we can get into all of that. But, there's your process as well. But if somebody's saying buck up, or you need to get over it, or it's been 11 years, you should just move on, whatever it is, don't, and we've all heard it. Anybody who's had any kind of trauma, it's like, you should be over it by now. Like, deal with it. Or, oh, you're too sensitive, which that's a whole nother topic too. But it's their trigger, and really recognizing if that is coming from them and they're saying those sort of things, how do I say this? It's their stuff to work on.
Yeah.
It's not yours. Because what's happening is they're only saying that because whatever's going on for you is making them uncomfortable.
Yes.
That is not your job as a highly sensitive or a victim or whatever, so all those people that are buck up, or your family members, or you should be over it, that's their stuff, not yours. That's emotionally, like, if they are saying that, then they are uncomfortable with what's going on, and that is not your responsibility. Period.
Right. Especially if you've just started on your healing journey and you're healing and you're hearing that, do not let it bug you, because
we are not responsible for other people's emotions.
Yeah.
period. We are not. People who are triggered, you're only triggered if you have something unresolved you need to work through.
Yeah.
You're not, otherwise, it doesn't bother you when you're not triggered. So if somebody is triggered by something you do or say, that is not your stuff.
Yeah.
Ever. That
Yeah.
is their job to work on that, not yours.
And how would you recommend like the highly sensitive might navigate a situation like that in the moment? Is it best to just kind of know that in the back of your head and say like, that's not my stuff, time to maybe walk away, put it in a box, whatever, how may we navigate that in the real world?
So that's the goal. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, right? And that's not to say even when we've gotten to that place that there's still not going to be those times that's like, whew, that hurt, or, and kind of get sucked into it. I'm not suggesting that it's ever going to, you're going to be in control all the time. That's not life. But what I am saying is that's the ultimate goal, is to be able to instantly recognize like, oh, that's not mine. Have fun with that one and walk, be able to like walk away. So the way that starts is really going back to that holistic approach that I was talking about before, which is, highly sensitive people. And I know I've recently talked about that. I think you shared the reel, but talking about the difference between overwhelmed, being nervous, overstimulated, and anxious, and all of these different things. So, in a program that I'm going to be doing later, I really break down the difference between highly sensitive people and empaths, and really helping you navigate, because when you can really understand where you're coming from, then you can build in the tools that are the most beneficial for you and what you're dealing with. And that can look like, yes, I know it's thrown out there, meditation. I get it. We've also talked a lot about meditation does not have to look like you sitting down, listening quietly to silent noise or a guided meditation. We can talk about that too. That doesn't have to look like that. It can look like cooking. It can look like going for a walk. It can look like taking a few breaths, or the 4. So breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. It can look like checking in on your 5 senses, grounding yourself. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? What do I taste? What do I feel? All of those sort of things are your baseline. It's your little tool bag. It's your, listening to music, all of these sort of things. The more you can internally learn to regulate your nervous system and recognize, so then we go into boundaries, right? Recognizing how to hold your boundary. You mentioned having to go to your family sometimes with armor on. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
That's great. You recognize like, whoop, I'm going to be around these people. I'm going to hold my boundary and let it, I say things sometimes to my clients, like, that saying, I walk them through a grounding meditation, and we visualize this bubble around them. And then I say, that saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And then you just visualize it bouncing off your bubble, so these are all things that I work on with my clients to get them to, and we work on it over and over and over. So it becomes a muscle. Yeah. You can't expect to get to that point you were talking about. That's your trigger, not mine. Peace out. See you later. You can't get to that point. Like, it's like walking into a gym. You can't walk in and expect to like lift 200 pounds.
Right.
Like, that's impossible. Well, I mean, for most people, it's impossible, or whatever, 500,000, whatever, but you have to be able to work on that muscle and continuously work on these, whether it's journaling, whether it's, like I said, cooking, whatever it is. Meditation and grounding is really about finding your inner peace and what that looks like for you. And when you can find that, you can build that boundary, and then you can get to those places where you're like, whew, that's not my stuff. And if it does still bother you, then that's something we look at. It's like, okay, what was it they said that still triggered you? So let's unpack that so that it no longer has an effect on you.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's a great tip, because that was going to be what I was going to bring us back to, is like early on the journey, I would like play with these, like you like to experiment. As you're expanding your mind, you have to find some humor in this. And I don't share this with our listeners today to sound unsensitive. I'm giving you guys this as a tip because, as a highly sensitive, finding humor lightened it up a little bit. So I would like literally mess with my family and say, like, okay, let's try this pattern again. Like, let's see if they'll say the same things. And what you start to realize on your healing journey is people say the same things over and over and over again. I'm sure if you guys have been listening to this podcast, like I'm guilty of this too. This is a human trait. And the more you start to digest that, or at least I did, it all became predictable. And it kind of comes back to marketing. Like when you understand that people follow in these patterns their whole lives. And unless you stand in your boundary of, I'm not playing this game anymore, I don't want to go down this pattern anymore, it hurts me, then you're doing great, right? But sometimes you just like to play with the pattern after you've become self-aware enough. It's okay to allow yourself to play with different boundaries. And again, it brings me back to that marketing piece of understanding that people really just follow on the same wheel their whole life.
Yeah, it's so true. And patterns, like you said, once you're aware of it, then you can kind of play around with it a little bit and be like, oh, okay, I see this. And before you're aware of it, it's those times when you're like, why does this keep happening to me?
Yeah.
I have some clients who, are working on relationship stuff. And it's like, why do I keep getting myself in the same situation every time?
Yeah.
Well, the common denominator is you. So let's take a look at your patterns. Let's take a look also about expectations. Let's take a look at, all of these sort of things, because a lot of times too, we have these expectations, whether it's dating, whether it's a job, whether it's starting your own business, whether it's marketing, whether it's, whatever it is, we set these beliefs, these stories, narratives around what we want to happen.
Yes.
And you and I both know, and probably a lot of your listeners, that is just resistance.
Yeah.
And the best way I can describe it, it's like you are swimming upstream in a current. And guess what? If you do that, you're going to stay stuck. But if you flip over onto your back and just go downstream, it's going to be a lot smoother. And you may hit some boulders and you got to navigate around them, but you're not resisting it anymore.
Yeah.
You're just flowing.
I love that analogy. It's so funny. Every time you and I talk, I just have to share this with our listeners, like on the air too. I have an epiphany. Like, it's like, I'm still dealing with this, So I just want to share that with everybody. Like, there's levels to this work, it might start with for me, it started with my external relationships, and then you start to look at yourself and it's like, wait, how am I playing out these patterns within myself? Like, how am I having these high ass expectations for my business, for myself? I'm putting so much pressure on myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so many levels to this, but that was such a great analogy. Like, I really wanted to hear that. And sometimes going with the flow is easier, but we, like you said, we have that resistance, we have this expectation, this belief. It's so difficult for us to give up.
Well, and we're told so much through society, through growing up, our parents, and no fault on anybody's, it's just passed down, right? Yeah. And so it's like, we're told, success, let's just say that's an easy one for me to kind of explain. So we're told, in order to be successful, that's equated to money, and money is equated to working every day, all the time, and really hard. Well, first of all, that's a bunch of crap. That none of that is true. Second of all, your success is going to look different than my success. So why are we defining it all in the same way?
Love it. Yeah.
Like that doesn't make any sense to me. Right. So it's like we have to really take a look at too. And a lot of times when I'm working up clients, they'll say something and they'll have this narrative or this belief around whatever it is. And I'll go, okay, well, let's look it up. Let's actually look at the definition
Yes, I love
And
it.
then we look it up and they're like, oh, well, that's not. And I said, right, because you've created this story, this narrative around this belief that does not serve you. It doesn't work. It's the swimming up the current. You're not going anywhere. So let's really define what that is. Let's really take a look at what that means for you,
Yeah.
not what society or our parents or our pastor or our whomever has told us that it's supposed to look like. And so I really help people break that down because we're so stuck in a lot of that.
Oh my gosh, totally. I feel like I'm constantly, it's almost like I think of them as like leeches. Like I'm like peeling it off, like it's in sucking my blood, like it's like killing me. I have to like, peel them off. And it's painful when you peel them off, like it's funny. They want to stay on,
That's amazing.
you
I love
know?
that one.
It's like because that's the way it feels.
That's so true. Oh man, that it's true. And we are all so unique and we all
Yeah.
have such a beautiful gift to bring into the world. And I've told you this many times. I mean, I'm educated and I know what I'm talking about. I'm not an expert in your life.
Yeah.
Like I just enjoy being there for people and walking that and unpacking that with people because I truly believe that we can all make a difference in the world. I like
Yeah.
wholeheartedly believe that we can make a difference. And that starts with really understanding ourselves and how we can contribute and how we can be kind and open the door for somebody or recognize our doing our own work. Also, we've talked about this too. Doing your own personal work really transforms everyone else around you.
Yeah.
And one, it can inspire somebody else to do their own work. Two, energetically, it transmits this whole different essence about you.
Yeah.
And then that person shifts a little bit, and then you're calling in people who are also on the same journey or have also done the same work, and you're not stuck in, like, for an example, depressed people hang out with depressed people. They attract depressed people. Anxious people attract anxious people.
Yeah.
So when we can really break a lot of that down for people and really help them take a look at their inner world
Yeah.
and how that's affecting their external world. I just feel like when we can start to do that, then we're capable of anything.
Yeah, I love that because it's so true. Like until you have the awareness, you have no clue that you're attracting all these people in your lives. And I just want to throw this out there. Sometimes it's really scary to have that awareness, it's frightening. It's like, wait, I haven't been aware of this shit. Like I remember for me, I'm like, I'm also educated. I went to school. Like I've been putting myself in this position my whole life. Like, how is this possible? And of course, there was some anger that came up. It's like, damn, if I would have known this before, like I could have healed faster. But that's the whole thing. That's where the anger is coming from. Like, your healing is a journey. You're on this at the right time when you're ready to digest it. And if you're at that point of your journey, just know that we're holding space for you and you're allowed to flush out your emotions in it. And it's actually really important that you do. And the other point that I wanted to make with what you just said about was actually something that you and I talked about privately offline, but it's that different type of verbiage, which I know this verbiage is going to take off this year, especially with back to school and things like that. Already kind of has it's a little bit woo woo, where people call human beings or empaths or the highly sensitive a light worker. And I love how when you and I were talking, it was more like changing that verbiage to a light liaison or a light empowerment for everyone else. And this was something
Light holder
light holder. I
and a
love
light anchor. Yeah.
light anchor because exactly how you just described, when we do the work, it overflows. You don't even have to say anything. And can you unpack with us what that, a little bit further, what that means to you and how you've even started to see that play out with some of your clients.
Yeah. So there was a couple things you said before that I wanted to comment on, but I don't remember. So we'll get back to that at some point.
Perfect.
But yeah, so one of the things is really understanding. This is a big one to unpack for me. It was really realizing what my role is and really understanding that I feel like my purpose and my job is to really bridge the mental health world and the spiritual world, because for so long, the spiritual world has always been looked at as guru or woo woo, or, and I'm guilty too. And oh, that's what I wanted to say was a lot of what I'm talking about. That doesn't mean I'm perfect at this.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I'm not human and I don't screw up or I don't get angry or I absolutely have to own my crap a lot of the time, particularly with my children and my husband. So, I do something so I just want to preface, I'm not perfect. And I don't want any of your listeners to ever think like, wow, she's got it all together. No, I don't. I'm continuously working on myself as well and checking my stuff, and so that I can be there in the best possible capacity for my clients. So with that being said, I don't even know how to describe this, except that I just had this intense awareness that this is my role.
Yeah.
That it really just came to me because I have been boxing. Here's the conditioned belief. See, I'm not perfect. I'm a mental health therapist, box. I'm a spiritual coach, box. And I was really struggling with trying to figure out how to bridge these. And then it was, well, yeah, I do some of the spiritual coaching stuff in my mental health. It still felt very boxed for me until I had this oh, I'm bridging it. Like there was just this sort of epiphany for me of this is my purpose, is to really help people understand that there's this, I know people can't see me, so I got to try to describe this. So there's, if you think about an X or a cross.
Sure.
Okay. So the vertical line.
Okay. I'm terrible at that too.
So out of my element. Okay, so the vertical line is, if we think about it in this sense, the vertical line is where we find, for some of us, we call it God, some of us call it universe, some of us call it Yeshua, some of us call it Buddha. It does not matter what your reference is. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter. It's an energetic place of peace, absolute inner peace. And being able to walk in your everyday life and feel that sense of I'm home. And not just home in your house, but home within your own spiritual being. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at the horizontal line, where the two intersect is kind of where we want to live. In this idea of we're not monks. We're not going to live, and meditate and pray or whatever for 19 hours a day. We have lives and this is not going to happen. So we want to kind of live in the realm, so that the horizontal line, meaning the human experience, the everyday stuff, the mundane stuff, the, whatever we want to call it. And so we want to live kind of in that space where most of the time we can feel at peace. And those are the tools I was talking about before, of finding what that is for you. Yeah. For me, it's taking hikes in nature, regrounding myself, journaling, or listening to music, or cooking with a podcast on. It's when I'm able to get out of my head and just be in my body. Yeah. And whatever that looks like for you, great. Find that. That's amazing. You can get my information will be at the bottom. Get a hold of me. I can walk you through some stuff. And then the further we get away from that inner access line, am I saying that right? Because I'm circling it. Yeah. That inner where the two intersects meet, the further we get away from that, that's where we're looking at disconnect. That's where we're looking at, personality disorders, disassociation. We're looking at more trauma that's kept us out of our bodies. We're looking at depression, anxiety. All of that's pushing us further and further away from that inner peace.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. I love it. I think that was a great example because it's confusing, like when you first start on this journey. And like Lisa said, all of her information will be linked below. So if you're having an epiphany moment and you want to talk it through with her, or maybe you're struggling with finding more of that inner peace, please reach out to her. She's happy to chat with you and, of course, take it offline if need be. I wanted to share this last thought with you before we wrap up our recording here. I was listening to this new, actually, Marvel show, She-Hulk, and it's actually really good. If you have Disney Plus, it's awesome. But they talk about meditation in the first episode. And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way, the way that they talked about it. And it was because he was trying to bridge, and I think that this is the way the world is heading, which you and I have talked about. It's very interesting that they just put this out. But he talks about how meditation is actually like a practice that doctors now prescribe to people. And I found it very interesting because I'm like, you can't really prescribe meditation to anyone, because they might not follow through with it. And exactly how you said in the beginning, it looks different for everyone. I find working out is a form of meditation. If I didn't start working out after my dad passed away, who knows where I would be. It was my only hour of peace in my day. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that because I thought of you when I heard it. I'm like, I like where they're headed with this, but it's just a little bit off. He's like, meditation isn't woo woo. And I'm like, no, it can be both things. I think that that's what this podcast is about. It's gray area, and that's okay. We don't always need an answer. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that as well.
So yes, I could see why that would rub you the wrong way because he's putting it in a box.
Yes.
He boxed it. It's either this or this.
Yeah.
And we tend to do that in society, right? Because that's what we've been told. That's what we've been conditioned to believe. I mean, even we're getting away, and I'm not trying to get into politics or anything, but we're even getting away from political parties, right? Because it's this or this.
It's about
everything. Exactly. It's this sort of like, you're either this or you're that. Or even we've talked about even with the vaccination. Are you vaccinated or not? Like, oh my goodness. Like, it doesn't, like, let's open our minds and expand it and be able to really take a look at, like, really hearing each other. Yeah. Actually listening. We as a society, and even with this thing, that you're talking about with meditation, we don't hear what people are actually saying because we are already triggered. So number one, we're triggered. So I got to get that in and I got to tell you and I got to right? And we just totally just didn't hear what that person has to say. I'm not saying you have to agree 100%. You do not have to agree with the other person, but I believe we should be able to hold that space.
Yeah.
And have a conversation about things. So going back to probably, again, why it bothered you is, he boxed it up. He said it's prescribed. So what do we think of when it's prescribed? Medication, right? So then we go into like medication and like you said, some people call it woo-woo. I hear a lot of people still say, I meditate, that woo-woo stuff. So
it's so funny.
Or it's like, okay, so the woo-woo stuff, but like, are you saying that because your beliefs around it?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's not like you're saying like, oh, I meditate, it's so woo-woo. Well, that's just your belief around it. You're just trying to get someone to like, oh yeah, that's, like you're waiting for a response about that rather than just saying like, I meditate.
That's how I felt. That's exactly, you hit the nail on the head. I was like, what is this bringing up for me? Because it wasn't even triggering. Like, I didn't even say it to Sean, but I was like, something about that phrasing. Like, it's exactly like what you said, putting it in a box, passing on the belief that it's woo woo, and which you and I have discussed before too. And this is for our listeners as well. I think of my practice, my toolbox that Lisa described earlier, the breathing, the grounding, the meditation, the cooking, the working out, the walking with Bailey. All of these things are a privilege because I have evolved. And I'm so grateful for that evolution. And this is what Lisa and I are discussing is when we reach this evolution as society, we're talking about sexuality and fluidity, politics and fluidity, beliefs in fluidity. You don't have to only believe one thing. You can believe both things. This is stuff that I used to say literally on the school ground in high school or like literally when I was younger. And people would be like, that's so not true. You have to choose a side, you know? And I'm like, let's just keep the peace. Like I was always the mediator. In every relationship, all my friends fighting, you know, family members. I came from very stark different families, the Irish and the Italians, very different beliefs. And when you can hold that space and allow someone to express themselves, there's also a trust that's built. So it projects you into this other energy where then they can raise to that energy with you. You're holding that space. I actually even tested out this theory with a few family members not too long ago. And when you can hold that energy, it becomes less scary. It becomes less heated. It just becomes a topic of conversation. And the fact that people probably had these conversations hundreds of thousands of years ago and discussed these beliefs in that capacity, can't we, as such an evolved society, like this is a privilege that we can start to do this for people. And then you really start to become that light anchor.
Yeah.
Everyone else in that room. So that was just so beautifully said. Thank you so much for sharing that piece about
that. One of my very core deep beliefs is like integrity. So I want everybody to get along. Like that's really difficult for me when things are inclusive. Like I want everybody to be included. Like why not? I don't understand. Like it baffles me. And when you hear people stand there and fight on one side or something, it doesn't make sense to me. Like you can hold that belief. I'm not suggesting that you can. I am suggesting that you listen to what I'm saying as well, and for us to have a conversation about this. And I do believe we are moving. I'm hoping in my generation we see this, but you know, I am older, so like, maybe my children will see it. I don't know. I just, this whole idea that we have around why not? You know, and it goes back to, so, you know, those that argue with me about energy, high frequency, all of those sort of things, I'm like, but yeah, you believe that there's a planet that's like how many, you know, million, thousand, billion years ago that we just discovered in NASA, like you can believe that. Like that's harder for my mind to wrap around. That was like billions and billions of years ago on the planet we just saw through NASA, but you can't in the here and the now recognize that your energy and your like frequency can make a difference. Like I don't understand. I'm trying, you know, for those that don't, like I'm holding that space for them.
Sure.
But it's hard for me to wrap my brain around that one.
Yeah. And I think that that's probably how most of our listeners feel, you know, because whether you're on either side, there is a victim feeling, right? Like whether you're being lectured or you're being the lecturer, for some reason you are triggered and you are feeling this emotion, and your emotions are valid, you know, like don't suppress them. Like this is what life is about. Is conversation, is evolution, it's all of these things that we're discussing. I think out of fear and scarcity, which a lot of our, you know, society is rooted in, that's where we just want to shut it down. We just want to shut it off. Like I remember my grandfather used to always say, we never talk politics, religion, or business at the dinner table. And they ran their own business. So, like, honestly, that was a blessing for most of us. God bless him. I love him so much. But it was a blessing at that time because that's what that generation, that's how they navigated it, right? So when we were talking about this ancestral trickle down effect, those are the types of things that you can come back to recognize it's not their fault. They just weren't ready for these conversations. I
Yes.
believe as a society, now we are getting there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's why we wanted to do this podcast.
Yeah. Well, and I want to say too, don't ever apologize for your emotions.
Yeah.
Now, when I say that, you don't ever apologize for your emotions. It's your behaviors.
Yeah.
That you need to be. So I always tell my kids, like, you can be mad. You can be mad. You can be frustrated. You can even go outside and yell. You can, hit a pillow, whatever you need to do. You may not do X, Y, and Z because that's a behavior that's unacceptable. Like, you can't come up and punch me kind of thing, whatever, like those basic things. But, a lot of times we are made to feel guilty for how we feel.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this because I know a lot of your listeners are highly sensitive or empaths. And so we are made to feel guilty for how we are feeling.
Yeah.
And don't like that. No, you can feel anything and everything you want to feel.
Yeah.
It's how we express those feelings is what we need to kind of take a look at.
I love that. Yes, the reaction in it all. That was a big one for me, because when you suppress the emotion, you're obviously going to react like without even sometimes being conscious, Some people don't even know that they might be short on the work call or say something at the Starbucks window that wasn't exactly appropriate, right? Like it can come out in so many different ways, but becoming aware of like, oh, maybe I said that because I was dealing with some of my own shit. Like, people know that, they probably don't. So yeah.
Well, and that goes back to what you were saying with your family, where it's like, these are the things we don't talk about. You can have emotions around every single one of those things, politics, religion, business, whatever it is. You can have feelings around that.
Sure.
It's how we have the conversation, which is the behavior that we need to take a look at. And then if you're triggered, then that's something you need to look at.
Yes. I could not agree more. It's so funny. I feel like as the family moderator, that's where we've gotten now. My mom has a view, my stepdad has a view, Sean has a view, his family have views. We all have our own individual views and beliefs, as we should, right? Like that's our right. And it's a great right to have. Again, it comes back to that privilege aspect.
Yes.
Of realizing that we can have these conversations. It's a beautiful thing. And that's what I started to do is just hold the space. Like most of the time, I don't even tell them what I think, because there's so many beliefs at the table. Yeah. Nothing needs to be said,
Yeah.
Brought up.
And in those moments, really recognizing what that feels like in your body.
Yeah.
Really paying attention to, because I know when I get triggered, my whole body starts to tingle and I can feel myself wanting to jump in and make some, those sort of things. So really coming back to being aware again, internally, what's going on with you and really taking a look at how are you responding, what's going on within your body.
Yes.
And that's a really good indicator to kind of figure out how to hold that space.
Yeah.
Or when to walk away, when not, like you said, I don't even bring it up. I don't even have to say anything because there's too many opinions. Yeah. And that's beautiful too.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's intuitively whatever you feel, exactly how you said. And of course, that will bring you back to trust yourself more. Like I found before I had done a lot of my trauma work, my reactions were not in alignment with my higher self or with who I am today, which I'm very glad to be able to say that, you know.
Yeah.
Of course, I want to mention here, there's always slip ups. I'm human, right? So
Yes.
this does not mean that I'm like, I'm healed and I'm holistic and I'm great. That's not the case at all. Of course, I make mistakes. But now I know when I've made a mistake, I have that awareness, right? Where before, maybe I would have just brushed it under the rug or not said anything because it was subconscious. I wasn't aware. So when you are able to navigate those situations in that way, again, it levels up that energy. You're like, that felt good how I handled that last situation. Next time I'm going to do it the same way because that felt really great, you know? And
Yeah.
then it just builds that trust with yourself again. You're getting back to who you are. And that's really what Lisa and I work on with her clients, with my clients. You know, it's very important to be able to trust yourself, and the more that you can build that trust, the more you'll solidify this type of, you know, light anchor that we've been
Yeah.
stringing
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. And really finding somebody that allows you to explore that without telling you what to do. They can give you suggestions. That's
Sure.
fine. You know, there's many times Caitlin's been like, well, what about this and this? And I'm like, yep, that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Like, not doing that.
Right.
And she's like, okay, well, then what feels good? You know, and so really finding somebody who can help you navigate and build that trust muscle like you're talking about. And a lot of times for me, this is one of the parameters I use. So whether it's a coach, for me for a long time it was like people who are gurus, you don't need to tell me that you're a guru.
Yeah.
Because I'll feel it.
Yeah.
I'll know it.
Totally.
And like, you don't need to tell me if you're a good coach or a good therapist or a good whatever it is, because guess what? I'll feel it. I'll know. And so that's just like for me a red flag. If someone's like, oh, I'm really good at this, or, you know, I can really help you with this, those sort of things, really pay attention to the language of how they're marketing themselves, how they're putting themselves out there, and really being able to like check in with yourself. Like, okay, interesting. Like, so a coach is saying, well, I can help you with your lack of better words, but trauma or your anxiety, or help you, you know, I know for you, it's like, I can help you get 1,000 followers by blah, 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 whatever, as an example. That's gonna feel very different than someone's like, what are you looking for? What is it that you're needing? And what feels good for you?
Yeah, totally. Totally different energy, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's also that masculine, feminine attracting, which you and I have talked about so many times, and also on this podcast. Yeah, that shoving it in your face. It's like, I'm the best, I'm the best. We don't have to say that. And it's that light anchor, right? It's like that same exact concept. If you're doing the work and you're sharing it in the most aligned way, people feel it, you know, and they'll come to you when they're ready. Like, my new sales tactic is like, somebody reached out to me, great, and they want to work together, awesome, let's have a call and make sure that it works, you know.
Yes.
Of course, I engage and communicate because that's just a portion of my personality.
Yeah.
But that's also the piece that you have to figure out in your business, right? How do you want to drive leads? How do you want to engage?
Yeah.
What feels good for you? And
or even in your job. Like if you're not an entrepreneur and you're navigating, or your family. Yeah. You know, that's one of the questions I'll always ask. What do you want it to look like? What's the feeling you want? And then I ask, is that attainable? So you want to have a beautiful relationship with your mother. Is she capable?
Right.
You know, like really, and that goes back to the expectations. It's like, you've got to be able to ask yourself these sort of questions. So, you know, like if you want, like, what do you want the feeling? First of all, what do you want from that? And that can be whether your business, like you just said, it can be your relationship, it can be your family, it can be whatever, it doesn't matter. But what's the energy, the feeling you want from this? And then you have to ask yourself, so let's say it's a friend. I want my relationship to look like X, Y, and Z with this friend. Well, is that friend capable of giving you that back?
Right.
And most of the time when we have to ask ourselves that, the answer is no.
Yeah, totally. Right.
Or like with a parent, it's like I have several clients who are doing work around their relationship with their parents. And it's like, so I'm not suggesting to not have a relationship with your parents. I'm just suggesting let's take a look at how can you have one with your parents.
Right. Because that might look very different.
It's going to look different. And if you have a need that has to be met, where can you get that else in your life?
Yeah. That's good. That's great. These are the questions totally you can start to like ask yourselves internally, and what isn't clicking, what is working, what isn't working. And I know from a partner standpoint, I'll share this with you guys openly. Sometimes I really did have to look at how was I showing up in the relationship, because
Yes.
sometimes I'm the problem. I hate to say it, but I'm like, dang, that wasn't my best hour, or my best week or my best month.
Oh, no. I'm laughing because that's the kind of stuff like, so my husband and I've also done a lot of therapy because we have kids. We come from different backgrounds. We really needed to I obviously believe in therapy, and I believe that, getting outside help can be really beneficial. And so that was one of the things too. That's why I'm laughing, is because a lot of the times I was the problem. And so learning how to own that, learning how I do this with my kids all the time too, where I'll freak out at them because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like overstimulated right now. And I'm like, rah, like scary mom. And then I'll be able to go, oh, okay, that's not how I wanted to respond.
Sure.
So I'll go and I'll say, my kids are named Maxfield and Bridger, and I'll say, Maxfield, I'm sorry for how I handled that. Yeah. I'm not sorry for, getting on you about X, Y, and Z. Sure. Like that behavior is not okay. I am apologizing for how I handled the situation, because that wasn't okay.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And I do that with my husband too. I'm sorry that and that is a very hard thing to do. It's an ego thing.
Yeah.
It's a pride. It's a lot of that, but those are, again, things that not only I work on, but help clients work on, because that is a very challenging thing, to take responsibility for your behaviors.
Totally. And especially when you do this work, it's like, you don't want to be a know-it-all, especially with the people that are closest to you, you're like, damn it.
Yes.
I did that, and it's like, oh, now I have to adjust that. And that sucks.
Yes.
But like, it's also very awakened. Like I've noticed that if I'm in the present when I'm apologizing, because sometimes I would apologize too early and I can't even receive their reaction or, their receiving of my apology. And when I now do it and I can see their reaction, it's so much more rewarding, because it's like, it's solidifying our relationship more and more. That can be with a best friend, that can be with your partner, your child, my dog sometimes, so it solidifies, and it makes, again, it's building more trust. So this can be external, internal, all of these different ways that we've described this. But yeah, being able to look at yourself is not the easiest, but checking your ego, I think, is, towards the middle of the healing journey.
Yes. There was many times in our therapy sessions where I was like, damn it. Okay, that was me. I apologize. I am sorry. And I could feel the resistance of the ego in there. Like, and it was like, but I've got to do it. I've got to practice that muscle. And I was in the wrong.
Yes.
Like, I was in the wrong. So I have, we have to teach the people around us and generations, our children and our children's children, how to take responsibility for your behaviors.
Yeah, totally.
It's so important.
Yeah. And it's kind of like that mentality, like you get what you give.
Yes.
Like it's that light anchor. It's leading by representation. It's showing, hey, I can do this, so can you. And guess what? It really wasn't that hard, even though it was hard. It's easier over time, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, shoot.
Yeah. Well,
But
and that goes into like being vulnerable, right? And I know you and I've talked a little bit about that, but that vulnerability piece is like, don't be vulnerable unless it feels good to you. Like, if
yeah,
the intention is that you're actually apologizing and you mean it, or you're sharing parts of you because you know that might help somebody and you've worked through your healing or whatever, then great. But don't be vulnerable because that's what we're all being told to do right now.
yeah, that's great.
Like,
That's such great piece. Because it's all fads. It's like
yes.
another fad, and it's like vulnerability is actually a really great tool once you know how to use it correctly.
Yes. Or authenticity. That's getting thrown around a lot. Or, which, beautiful. Yes, we should be authentically ourselves, 100%, or aligned, 100%. You have to understand how that works for you.
Yes.
Don't just do it because some coach or your therapist or someone, a podcast or somebody said this is what you should be doing because this is what worked for me. Okay, great. Try it out. Like, there's a lot.
Well, luckily, all of our listeners will hear this at the beginning of the show, but this will be our start of our mini series. So we're going to have Lisa back many other times. Obviously, there's a lot that we're going to be unpacking here. So I hope you guys, digested all of this. But definitely, next time, I'm going to write down for us the authenticity and vulnerability because I started using that rhetoric way before anybody really started using it in the fad online world. And that was exactly how I approached it, which I'm sure it's more about asking yourself, does this feel good to share today? Do I have a message that I even want to share today? Or do I really just need to watch Netflix? Like sometimes
Yes.
it's human. So yeah, I love, we'll come back to that. And we're also going to be unpacking even more what highly sensitive people actually feel. How can they navigate this traumatic, crazy, gnarly world that we all live in right now? I know that it's been pretty challenging for me. And Lisa and I'll be opening up about a lot of my experiences as a highly sensitive, and she'll be sharing with us some of her new programs in a few minutes. If you're ready to dive in right now, she has options for you coming up, which are definitely going to be able to cater to us highly sensitives, which it's challenging out there for us. So can you tell us a little bit more about those offers and how you may be able to help some of us?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I do one-on-one. Obviously, that was, I kept saying clients, but I am going to be opening up a group for highly sensitive people and empaths, particularly, or anybody who might benefit from this. So it'll be a 3-day, 60 to 90 minutes, for 3 days each day. And day one, we're just going to break down what highly sensitive means, what that looks like versus empath, because they are very different, and understanding it, like really getting to the bottom of that. It's not just me lecturing or me talking. It's a group. All of us, it's an experience. I really feel like we can all learn from each other. And yes, I'll be facilitating it. Yes, I will be opening, describing it, but I also want people to feel comfortable enough and open enough to really kind of just be there and be themselves and share their wisdoms. And then day 2 is going to be how to protect your energy, setting boundaries, and leaning into balance, and what does that look like. And then day 3 is owning your gift. I believe being an empath and highly sensitive people, it's a gift. And how do we lean into that and own it and not let those stories, come around and things like that. And then it'll be a Q&A, and that's just for 3 days. And then I have another program that helps break down conditioned beliefs and fears and assumptions. That's a 12-week program that I'll be opening up probably in the fall, I'm thinking. I'm not set on a date on that one yet. And then going into, how to pay attention to being intuitive and your energies, and basically everything we kind of just talked about wrapped up into a program going really deep into that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, like I said, one-on-one. And then, I'm going to be opening up. Caitlin and I are working on more little mini workshops and little mini programs and stuff because, again, want to be able to serve people and help them unpack the things that they need to in a very safe environment where they feel that coming each day that they feel really good about and can carry that into their daily lives. So,
yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. These programs are going to be spectacular, you guys. Like, I already have had a sneak peek into them and I can't wait. I will be in them. So, if you want to hang out, please come over and hang out with us. And the other key piece that I want to add here for me as an empath, which I think that you represent to me, is really safety, because there's so much chaos and we can be hurt very easily. This will be a safe place for you to finally open up and share. So if this has been a journey for you, and maybe you've been listening to this podcast and thinking, I really resonate with that, this is the place for you to come to open up some of your gifts, because it is a gift, which we've shared before on the show. But like Lisa said, she's really going to walk us through what our gifts are. And I can't wait to hear more about it. So
I want to preface too, absolutely the safety piece. I'm also going to screen people. So just so you know, those listening that are kind of like, oh, that sounds good, but I'm a little, weary. I'm going to screen people, and I am very comfortable with telling people no. I'm very comfortable with making sure that the people that are in this group really want to be in this group and are really ready to open up and feel safety and all of those things. So just for some of you that may be feeling like, I don't know, I want to, but I'm a little nervous, I will screen people because I don't want this to be a therapy session. I want it to be a very collective group. So I just want to preface that for those that might be feeling that.
Yeah, that's a great portion too. And of course, you can always reach out to myself or Lisa. Lisa and I are very close. So I can always connect you guys if you're currently driving and you don't have time to check out the links. We can talk to you in the DMs as well about, if there's some nervousness that comes up, she's happy to help you navigate through that, because we're all nervous. And I just want to normalize your feelings, because I had never even really enrolled in a group coaching program until I knew that I needed a lot of help. And that's why I'm really looking forward to this, because this will be the first mental health group program that I'll be enrolled in. So I'm like really stoked. And it's been a long time coming. So like I said, reach out to Lisa. All of her links are below. If you can't find them, DM me. And then thank you so much for coming on. I can't wait to have you back soon.
Thank you so much. It's always so much fun to talk with you. I really enjoy it. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much for listening to The End in Mind. I would like to remind you all, if you haven't yet reached out to me on Instagram, we are at Meraki_media_management. It will be in our show notes as well. If you would like to reach out to me, we always offer free coaching through Instagram based around our Instagram training and our business Instagram practices. If you need any type of support, please do not hesitate to reach out to me there. And we also offer several different types of consulting and training packages if you're looking for a little bit more in-depth tips. So thank you all for listening in. And of course, I want you all to keep the end in mind as you continue with your day and or work week. Have a great week, and I will see you all next time.